This conference will now be recorded.
So in last sessions, we were discussing about basics of Docker. What is image? What is container? How to create image? How to create a containers? How to push and pull the images from registries? We discussed. So today we'll try to understand about very important concept called a Docker file. So we have image. In Docker, there is a concept called image. There is a concept called container. So image is basically it's a package. It's a package which contains required softwares, libraries, and application code and configurations to run a application, to run a piece of software, basically application, to run a application. So what is container? Basically, container is a runtime instance. Container is basically it's a runtime instance or runtime process of your image. Now image creation is very important. Image creation is very important. Image creation is very important. So how to create an image? To deploy any application, you take Java based application, Python based application, Node.js application, or any application. If you want to deploy as a container, you need an image. What is the input or what is the source of the image? What is the input for the image? How to create an image? From where we can create the image? Where can I define that instruction? That is defined in the Docker file. So Docker file, it's a file using which we can create image quickly. It's a file using which we can create an image quickly. What do we have in this Docker file? In Docker file, we will have an instructions. We'll have an instructions. We will have an instructions to create image. We will have an instructions to create image. Docker daemon or Docker will process these instructions from top to bottom. So that instruction, in what programmatic language are we going to write any programmatic language? Like does Docker file will have any extension like .ph, .sh or .py, .java? Is Docker file, are we going to use any programmatic language to write a Docker file? No. So we will use Docker DSL instructions or commands. We will use Docker DSL instructions, or we call it as a commands in a Docker file. What is meaning of DSL? It is nothing to do with Docker. DSL is basically domain specific language. Domain specific language. Domain specific language. Like let's say let's take SQL. Can I call this as a DSL, SQL DSL instructions like select, from, where? In SQL, we are going to write some queries, right? Something like this. Select a star from employee where EMP equals to something like this. So can I call this as a domain specific respective to that software like SQL? Select star from. In the background, it has some meaning. In the background, it will do some functionality. But do you need to worry what is happening in the background when I write something like this? What is going to happen in the background? We no need to worry. There is some logic executes happen in the background. So similarly, we are going to use Docker domain specific instructions in a Docker file. Like what are those? We already used a few. What are those? Like we already used from, we already used copy like this. So these Docker specific instructions, can I write in a small case or camel case, something like this, or something like this? Or this, this Docker file instructions should be in uppercase? You guys already have written some sample Docker files, right? So can I write in a small case or camel case? No, it should be in uppercase, something like this. Each instruction will have some meaning. Each instruction will have some meaning, right? Like this, we have some instructions from, copy, add, run, CMD, entry point. Like this, we have some instructions. env, arg, label, user, expose. Like this, we have some instructions. So each instruction will have some meaning. So what this from indicates? If you see any Docker file, if you see any Docker file, what is the first line? Most of the Docker files you see, if you see any Docker file, you take any project, what is the first instruction in your Docker file? What do you see? You take any project, any Docker file, what is the first instruction you see in the Docker file? From. Sometimes in the interview, they may ask, can I have any other instruction except from as a first line in the Docker file? Sometimes in the interview, they may ask, can we have work dir as a first line? Can I have copy as a first line, run as a first line in the Docker file? No. So the first line, most of the cases, 99%, what do you see? The first line from. But only one instruction which we can define apart from is arg. I can define arg also as a first line. Argument is like a variable in a Docker, right? I can define one variable using arg. Except arg, can I define any other Docker file instruction as a first line except arg in a Docker file? No. But I can define arg also as a first line. That is one argument, kind of a variable. So what this from indicates? What this from indicates, which you are already familiar? What this from indicates? What are we trying to define using from? What are we define? The base image on top of which you are creating your own image, the base image. From indicates are basically using from, we can set or define whatever it is. Base image. We are going to set a base image. We are going to define a base image. On top of this base image, whatever commands we use, whatever instructions we use, those will be created as a layers on top of that image. Using from, we can set a base image for our own image. On top of this base image, we can create whatever image you want to create. This can be any base image, right? If required, I don't want to use official Tomcat image. If required, will I able to create my own Tomcat image, custom Tomcat image? I don't want to use the official Tomcat image. I want to customize a image for my applications. I want to create my own base image, custom base image. Will I able to do using Dockerfile? I don't want to use official Tomcat image. I want to create my own Tomcat image for my application, my project. Can I do that using the Dockerfile instructions? Can I take base as maybe CentOS or base as maybe CentOS, just libraries like CentOS library or Ubuntu library or Alpine library. On top of that libraries, on top of that base image, can I install my own Java software and can I customize my Java? Can I customize Tomcat on top of that base using these instructions? We can do that. Something like this. Let me show you. Something like this. Just to give an example, I have kept this one. If you see something like this, by taking a plain container libraries on top of this base image, can I write some instructions to create my own Tomcat base image like this? Just to give an example, I have kept this one. So if you observe this one, what base image I am taking? Ubuntu. On top of that base image, am I installing whatever softwares which is required in my image, my own image? Like I'm installing Java, I'm installing something like this, and I'm downloading Tomcat. Can I customize? Can I customize the softwares in my Docker? Can I create my own custom image like this? So we can do that using Dockerfile. Now, whether it's a Dockerfile of your custom base image, whether it's a Dockerfile of your application. So what this from indicates, guys? What this from indicates? From indicates the base image. On top of it, we are creating our own image. Okay. So how do you define? Like from this image. Now let's say if my image is in my own registry, in that case, do I need to mention registry name also? If my image, the base image or whatever image I am using, if it is in my own registry, do I need to define something like this in the Dockerfile? Registry name, repo name, and also tag? If it is in my own registry, I need to define like this, the base image. Now, suppose if I say something like this, from, let's say, Tomcat colon something, some tag. So from which registry this base image is going to be pulled? If I define this way, what is the default registry where it will pull, from where it will pull this base image? From the Docker Hub. From the Docker Hub, it will pull the image, right? So again, If I don't mention tag, what tag or which tag it will try to refer? Colon latest. If that image doesn't exist in the repository, again, will it work? Will it able to pull that image? If that image doesn't exist in the repository, colon latest tag. No, right? So we should have an image with that tag, the base image also. Now I can define this way, the image, right? Now if you see this example, any example, like let's say the project, actual application. Let's take this application or any application. So for this application, what is the base image we are using? Let's say this is one application. What is the base image we are using? This is repository name. This is a tag. What is the base image we are using? Like for this application, we are using Java, JDK, right? So from indicates the base image using which we are creating our own image. Something like this we will define. Now, what is this copy? We already use copy. What is this copy? Chandan is asking, do you have any image libraries? I mean to say registries you are talking about, Chandan, other than Docker Hub? Other than Docker Hub, yes, we have some. Red Hat is maintaining one repository. Okay, so Red Hat image registry. There is a one registry basically, right? Red Hat is maintaining their own registry, like Docker is maintaining, but no one, like most of the people are using what? Most of the people are going to use as a central repository that for base images, Docker. So Red Hat is having its own. The way Docker is maintaining Docker Hub, Red Hat is maintaining its own registry. Okay, but most of the people will use Docker Hub as a base image. But again, in real time, most of the cases, we are going to create a customized images. We are going to create a customized images, right? That we can maintain in our own registry. Now, from indicates base image, whatever it is. Then what is this copy? What is this copy? Using copy, what we can do? What copy can do? So copy is a Docker file instruction. Using copy, what we can do? Using copy, we can copy files or folders, directories to the image. Don't say container, to the image. Copy is a Docker file instruction. We can copy files, local files or folders. What is the meaning of local files? What is the meaning of local files? From the server where we are building the image. From the server where we are creating the image. Basically build context. from the build context. So basically, what type of files we will copy? Like using copy, can I copy any file like application code, application files, or configuration files like XML files, YML files, or property files? Can I copy any files like application code, can be configuration file? So using copy, will I able to copy whatever files is required in my image? At the end, whatever files I copied to the image, if I create a container out of that image, does those files will be available in container? Whatever files I copied to the image, if I create a container out of that image, can I access those files in that container? Because what is the input for your container? What is the input for your container? Image. So if I need some application code, or if I need some configuration file, can I create image with that file? Can I create images with that files so that those files will be available in your container wherever you create a container? Yes. So using copy, we can copy files, local files, that can be anything. So this something like this, something like this. Copy, it has two things, source and destination. So what is the source and what is the destination? Source is from which one? This source is basically local file or folder from build context. So this destination, the destination file is like, what is the destination file? The destination path. This destination path is basically path. This destination path. This is source path. This is source path. This destination path. This destination path is basically the path of your image, inside your image, path of the image where you want to copy within the image, where you want to copy. So where you want to copy in the image. Now I can give something like this. If you see this one, any Docker file, if you see this project, if you see this project, we use copy. So this is source, this is destination, right? We can copy something like this, files also. If required, can I copy the folders also? Not only file, can I copy the folder itself? Some folder from build context to the image. We can copy the folders also. Now I can give something like this, right? Just to give an example, I can give something like this. Something like this, right? So this is your source path. This source path should be there in which directory? I told many times, this source path should be there in which directory? Whatever I have highlighted here, that source path should be there in which directory? In the build context, in the build context. So whatever build context you are giving. Suppose I am executing this command, something like this. Image name, I have given dot. Dot represents what? current directory. So this directory and this file should be part of which directory now? In the current directory. Let's say my current directory is this. My current directory is this. Let's say my current directory is this. So my current directory is this. Then suppose this is in a different directory. Suppose this is in this directory. Even though I give the complete path, is it going to copy? This is where I am executing the command. This is where I am executing the command. This is my current directory, and I have this source file in this directory. Is it going to work? No. That is what the meaning of build context. So whatever files you are trying to copy, those files should be part of what? Those files should be part of your build context. Your build context. Suppose your build context, this is your directory from where you are building. And if you have a source file in a different directory outside of this build context, will it copy this one? No, it will fail. That is the meaning of build context. Okay. So we are going to copy the files using copy instruction. Nandabala is asking one question. What is the star represents? What star represents, guys? Line X. Can I call that as a regular expression? Whatever the file name, after this wildcard characters. Suppose I have a file something like this in this directory. If I have a file with this name, is it going to consider that file name also? Suppose I have a file with this name, like 10.0.1. If I give star here, is it going to consider this one and copy that? This is already discussed, guys. Don't ask small questions. So now we can copy the files and folders to the directory using build context. Now I already told, suppose I have here, I have this folder here. Now I am executing build command from this directory. Is it going to work? I already told. Now instead of this dot, can I give this as a build context? Instead of dot, can I give this as a build context? From anywhere I can execute docker build command. Now can I give this as a build context? /opt. You can give the build context, right? That is what I already explained. If you practice this one, you should able to understand. Otherwise, you cannot understand. Without practicing, if you ask the questions, you cannot understand anything. Now, if the Docker file is in different location, can I give that Docker file location as -f? Suppose Docker file is in some other directory. Can I give the Docker file using -f? Suppose Docker file is in this directory. Can I give that? This is way you can do that. But are you going to execute these commands like this in your project? Because does each and every project will have its own Docker file where the Docker file will be part of? The Docker file will be part of your source directory, right? Your project directory, and whatever code you want to copy, does that code also will be part of your same directory, your project directory. So that's why most of the cases you see something like this, -t, just a dot. So dot represents this file is also part of your directory, right? So that is how it works. But what is copy? Forget about all these things, whatever I told, which I already explained a lot of times, but still you have a doubt. I explained this one again. So what is copy? Copy, basically copy files from server to the image, wherever you want to copy in the image. In what directory? In your image environment where you want to copy. This can be any directory in your image where you want to copy. So copy can copy files from system to the image. So can I define something like this? Just two dots. Can I define something like this? Just two dots, copy dot space dot. What does it mean? What does it mean? Copy dot space dot. Any guess? So first dot represents source. Source. What is source? Whatever files you have in the build context. All the files, whatever you have in the build context, you are trying to copy to the second dot. Second dot is what? Second dot, can I call this second dot as a working directory of your image? Working directory of the image. Second dot, can I call this working directory of your image? This is your build context. First dot. So whatever files I have in the local system, in the build context, is it going to copy all the files and folders to the image working directory? So all the files in your build context will be copied to the working directory of your image. That can be whatever working directory in that image. So we can copy the files using copy. Now, what is the difference between copy and CP? I already told what is difference between CP, basically Docker CP, and copy. What is the difference, guys, between these two? In the interview also they'll ask this question. What is this? Docker CP is a command. Docker CP is a command using which we can copy files or folders from container to the system, system to the container. Whereas copy is a Docker file instruction using which we can copy files to the what? Files to the image or files to the container using copy. Files to the image. Okay. So we copied some files that can be application code, that can be configuration files to the image. The way we have a copy, we have a one more instruction called add. The way we have a copy, we have a one more instruction called add. What this add does? Using add, what we can do again? The way we have a copy, there is a one more instruction called add. Using add, basically, we can add in the sense copy again. We can copy local files, we can copy local files, and also files from HTTP endpoints, remote files, HTTP endpoints, URLs, remote files, files from the remote locations, local files as well as remote files. What does it mean? What is the meaning of remote files? Add is like a kind of a wget. So if I do something like this, let's say, just to give an example, I am giving this. Something like this, both are equals. Can I download? I mean to say, can I add the file from remote location? I can give something like this, second as a dot or some directory, right? Files from the remote locations. So it has syntax like this: add source path and destination, or we can have something like this: source URL in the sense any HTTP endpoints, like files from remote locations, like files from internet, files from Nexus, something like that, right? So we can download them. Basically, we can add the files from remote location also. And also will I able to copy local files also. The way I have used copy, using add also will I able to copy local files like this. Will I able to copy local files something like this? We can copy local files, and also is it possible to add or basically copy files from remote locations like any, like this, any HTTP endpoints like this. Will I able to copy from this location to the image? That can be anywhere in the image. We can copy local files and also files from the remote location. So what is the difference between copy and add now? These are very, very important. What is the difference between copy and add? In the interview, they are going to ask all these questions, cross questions. Using add, I can copy remote files also, but using copy, will I able to copy remote files? Using copy, will I able to copy remote files in the sense the files which are in a remote location, only local files. And also there is a one more feature in add. If we are adding, basically if we are adding in the sense we are copying tar files, this instruction will add tar file, and also it will extract that tar file in the image once it has been added. Basically once it has been copied, the tar file, only tar files. So Suppose again, if your file is ending with something like this, guys, suppose you are adding one file. If you are adding one file, if it is ending with the tar.gz, something like this, is it going to extract again? Is it going to extract again? No. The file should end with, the file extension should be only .tar. Then only it can extract. So this is the additional feature of add. This is the additional feature of add. Add can copy local files and files from remote locations. And if you are adding tar files, extension should be just .tar. Okay, it will extract the tar file. You no need to explicitly extract. So this is the additional feature of the add, right? So that is the difference between copy and add. Now let's try to understand what is this run instruction. What we can do using run, what we can do using CMD, what we can do using entry point. Very, very important instructions. What we can do using run instruction? Suppose if you see some Docker files, if you see some Docker files, sample Docker files, I have defined run also. I have defined run also, some Docker files. What that run do? Let's say, let's take this one. Using run instruction, if you see, I have some run instructions in this Docker file. Run this command, run this command, run. There are some run instructions. What these run instructions will do? We can execute, or basically we can run commands on top of what? On top of previous layer. We can run the commands on top of a previous layer, basically image. If I want to execute some commands while creating an image, can I execute those commands while creating an image? We can execute commands. We can execute commands on top of the previous layers, basically image on top of the images, right? So what is the use case for run? Suppose I want to install some software on top of that image. I want to create some folder on top of the image, in the previous image, on top of the base image. On top of the base image, I want to create some folder, or on top of the previous image, on top of the base image, I want to again have some additional software. Can I install those softwares? Can I create the folders, or can I run some commands on top of the previous image, previous layer, using this run instruction? Can I install some software using run instruction, or can we create some folders in the on top of that base images, on top of the previous layers? We can execute a commands on top of the base image, right? Let's take this example so that you can easily understand. Let's take this, let's take this Docker file as an example. Let's take this Docker file. Let's say, let's take this one, JBoss image. Let's take this JBoss image, JBoss Docker image, right? So you have this image, let's take. Now, if you see the Docker file of that image, right? You can see the Docker file. The source is available in this GitHub, the Docker file of that JBoss image. So if you see, this is the Docker file of JBoss. What this indicates, on top of which base image they are creating a JBoss image? On top of which base image they are creating a JBoss image? What is the base? If you see, JDK, JDK base image, JBoss registry, JDK repository, JDK11. On top of this JDK11, using this run instruction, do you see they are downloading that JBoss tar file? Do you see they are downloading JBoss tar file? They are extracting JBoss tar file. So on top of JDK, using run instruction, are they executing some commands to install required software like JBoss? If you see run, they are downloading JBoss software. They are extracting JBoss software. They are changing the ownership. They are changing the group. So on top of Java image, using these instructions, they created their own image. So this image contains what? Whatever image is created out of this Docker file, does that image contains Java as well as JBoss? Whatever image has been created out of this Docker file, does this image will have a Java and also JBoss? Yes, no? So using run instruction, can I execute some commands on top of the previous layer? That command can be installing a software. That command can be installing a software. That command can be creating a folder. That command can be something, right? So this is Linux basics, guys. I don't know why you guys are asking a lot of Linux questions now. If I want to execute multiple commands, can I use this escape character? Can I use this double ampersand? Did you guys anytime executed like this Linux? If required, will I able to execute something like this? You have written a shell script. In your shell script, did you guys use this kind of operators? So what this indicates, let's come back to this one. What this indicates, what is this backward slash indicates? New line, escaping character, right? So this is one command, this is another command, this is another command, right? Run command. I mean to say all these commands will be executed using run. So now we can execute a commands on top of the previous layer. That can be anything. Suppose, can I do this way? Suppose I want to create a directory on top of the previous layer. Can I create a directory? Something like this on top of the previous layer. Can I execute something like this? We can do that. If required, can I install some software? Suppose I need a Vim software in the image itself. While creating an image itself, I need to have some library like Vim library, wget library. In my image, can I do this way? On top of the previous layer, can I install wget software if required? And also, can I install Vim software if required, something like this in the image while creating a image. So we can use this run instructions to execute some commands, right? So each and every command in a Docker file, each and every command in a Docker file, is it going to create a layers, that image layers? Suppose I have some instructions in a Docker file. Does each and every instruction will end up a layer for that image? It will create a layer for that image, right? So we can execute commands. To explain even better, if you see, let's see the Tomcat base image, whatever we are using. Let's see the Tomcat base image, whatever we are using, right? This is the Tomcat image, official image. That image also created using some Docker file. That image also created using some Docker file. So let's take Tomcat base image. Like let's take Tomcat base image like this. Now, if you see, on top of which base image, let's take maybe Tomcat 8 version. Let's take Tomcat 8 version. Let's take this one. So this is the Docker file of Tomcat base image. On top of which base image they are creating a Tomcat? If you see, if you observe, using run instruction, do you see, are they creating some folders? Run mkdir user local Tomcat. Using run instruction, are they creating some folder on top of the previous layers, on top of this base image? They created that folder user local Tomcat. And using run instruction, do you see they have downloaded Tomcat software? Using run instruction, if you see, did they downloaded Tomcat software? The tar file, Tomcat tar file, and extracting the Tomcat tar file. If you see, they're downloading their Tomcat, extracting. So using run instruction, can I execute some commands on top of the previous layer? We can execute some command, that can be anything, right? Now, so these commands, is it going to work all the commands? Or again, this is based on the previous layer and again based on the previous image? If you see, suppose this is using maybe CentOS libraries. This base image is using CentOS libraries. Can I use apt here? If this base image is using CentOS libraries, can I use apt package manager? No. Suppose if this previous image that doesn't has a package manager library itself, again, will I able to install softwares using package managers? If the previous layer, if the previous image doesn't have package manager software, in that case, will I able to execute commands, m commands or apt commands again? No. So all these commands, whatever I am going to execute, that should be part of the previous layers or the base image. Suppose if I don't have a Vim software, VI software, will I able to execute run VI Vim kind of a thing? Will I able to execute run VI Vim? We can't do that. We should have that software first. Then you can execute the commands. Madhu is asking, do we need to write the Docker file? Madhu, did you attend at the Docker classes from the beginning? Don't waste time by asking the same questions whatever has been explained. We have a lot of other important concepts to cover. Did you attend all the Docker sessions from day one? I'm asking you only, Madhu. Did you attend all the Docker sessions from day one? Okay, even though you miss the classes, we are sharing the recording. At least did you went through the recording? Okay, I do understand. I do understand we missed the classes because of some issues. But did you went through the classes? Did you went through the recordings? Then why are you asking this question? Guys, did I explain who is going to write the Docker files? Please don't waste the time. I am very happy if you ask some new question. I am very happy if you ask some new question which is not already explained. But I felt very bad or I feel irritated if you ask the same question whatever has been explained multiple times, because it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of your time also. You guys are not attending the classes, you guys are not going through the recordings, and I am explaining I am explaining XYZ, you are asking questions on ABC. Sir, what is ABC? Which is already discussed. So please don't waste time, first of all, for the questions which is already explained. Go through the recordings. If you are not able to understand after going through the recordings also, let me know. Without putting an effort, I can't explain same topic multiple days. You guys should put an effort to go through the recordings, attend the classes and practice. Then only you can learn. Don't waste others' time. Okay. If you ask some new question, I am more happy. So now, using run instruction, we can execute some commands. That commands is based on the previous layers, previous base images, right? Now, can I have more than one run instruction in a Docker file? Can I have more than one run instruction in a Docker file? Something like this, run and your command. So I can have more than one run instruction like this. That command can be anything. That can be creating a directory. That can be creating a directory on top of that image, or that can be installing some software. That can be installing some software like this, or that can be something like this. That can be downloading some file, curl command, or that can be downloading something like this, wget command, right? So that can be anything. That can be extracting a tar file. So we can have a more than one run instruction in a Docker file. So all these run instructions, will it be processed one after the other? While we are creating an image, if I have more run instruction, will these instructions will be processed one after the other? All these instructions will be executed one after the other. In which order? In which order it will be executed? All the Docker file. From top to bottom. So the first instruction will be from, then you can have some run instruction. So based on what you want, suppose I want to execute, let's say I want to execute some command here. Let's say I want to extract tar file, but without downloading tar file, will I able to extract the tar file? Will I able to execute this command first without having the tar file in the image? Will I able to execute this command first without having the tar file here? So in that way, do we need to have some order based on like what you are trying to do, right? First, do I need to add that tar file? Then only will I able to execute the tar file. So you need to have something. Whatever command you are trying to execute here, that command, that file should be part of the previous layers, right? So you will follow some order. Order in the sense, it is not like first you need to have copy, then you need to have run, something like this. It is not like that. So based on the previous layer, you are going to execute the next layer. Okay. Now we can execute multiple run instructions in a Docker file. Now all the run instructions will be executed one after the other. Now what is difference between this? Very confusing questions. What is difference between run and a Docker run? What is the difference between these two? What is difference between this run and what is this Docker run? Lot of confusing questions in the interview to test your knowledge, how good you are at Docker. So this run instruction, using run instruction, we can execute commands on the Docker. We can execute commands on the Docker image. I mean to say, run is a Docker file instruction. Run is a Docker file instruction which we will use in a Docker file to execute some commands on top of the previous layers, previous images. So when these run instructions will be executed, will these run instructions will be executed while creating a image, or it will be executed when we are creating a container? Run instructions will be executed while creating a image. Run instructions will be executed while creating an image. We can have more than one run instruction in a Docker file. Or we can have n number of run instructions. We can have n number of run instructions in a Docker file. All these instructions will be executed. All these instructions will be executed while creating an image. Run instructions while creating an image, right? So this Docker run, this Docker run will be used for creating a container. Let's say I have a lot of instructions in Docker file. Suppose I have this instruction is failed. Is it going to continue with the next set of instructions? Suppose there is a issue in this instruction. Is it going to execute next set of instructions? Forget about run, any instruction. Does your image will be created? Does image creation will be failed? Image will be created and image will not be created, right? So we already observed that I don't have that file, whatever file I was trying to copy. Without that, I was trying to copy that file. using copy instruction, that is image is created successfully or image creation is failed. Forget about run, with copy also it is going to be failed, right? So you need to make sure you are going to write a Docker file properly. That is what our job. Based on the requirement, you need to write a Docker file. Based on the requirement, based on the use case, you need to write a Docker file. What do you need while creating an image, right? So this is what we can do using run. Then we have a CMD. What is this CMD? What is this CMD? What is this CMD? We can execute again. We can execute commands using CMD again. But when these commands will be executed, that is most important. Season is asking run versus Docker exec. What is run versus Docker exec, guys? Whether it's an IT or whether it's a normal. When I use this Docker exec, these commands will be executed on top of what? This is the syntax. This is the syntax, whether you use IT, whether it is like normal. So these commands will be executed inside the container. What this run does? What this run does? Think, understand the concept. What this run does? I can execute commands using run, but that commands will be executed when? That commands will be executed while creating an image. As I already told, I can do the modifications. I can do the modifications inside the container. But is it recommended to do the modifications inside the container? Is it recommended to install some software directly inside the container, or edit some configuration files, modify some configuration files inside the container? Why it is not recommended? Why it is not recommended, as I already told? Why it is not recommended? Any changes you do in the container, does that changes will exist if the container is deleted and if you recreate a container? Any changes you do inside the container, I miss to install some software while creating an image, I miss to install some software, I can go inside the container and do that, but that software will exist if I remove the container and recreate the container? No. But if I do that while creating a image itself, I have done that configuration or I have installed that software while creating the image itself, does that software or that configuration will exist inside the container wherever you create? Because it's part of image. Wherever you create a container, that exists. Okay. So that is what is we can do using run. So CMD, we can execute a commands again using CMD. I can execute some command. That can be any command. That can be any command. That can be any script I want to execute, or I want to execute some code like this. I can run any command using CMD. That can be any command. So, But when this command will be executed, what is the use case of this command? What is the use case of this instruction? So using CMD, we can set the, I mean to say we can start the process. We can start the process. We can start the application. We can start the application, basically process. Using command, we can start the application. We can start the process. So this CMD will be executed when? CMD instruction will be executed when? Executed when? Will it be executed while creating an image or while starting the container? When it will be executed, the CMD instructions, does the CMD instruction, whatever CMD instruction I give in a Docker file, does that CMD will be executed while creating an image or while starting the container? The CMD instructions will be executed while starting the container. So can we have more than one CMD? Can we have more than one CMD in a Docker file? Technically, yes, no. That can be in your Docker file, that can be in base image. Technically, it's possible. We can have more than one CMD in a Docker file, but only one recent CMD will be executed. Only one will be executed. Even though you have more than one CMD, does all the commands will be executed while starting the container? Even though I have more than one CMD, will all the commands will be executed while starting the container? No. Only the recent one, last one. If you observe, let me connect to my server, Docker server. Let me connect to my Docker server. So let's say I have this image. Right? This image. Let's take this one. This image is created. Out of this Docker file. That image is created out of this Docker file. This image is created out of this Docker file. So this Docker file, out of this Docker file. If you see, I don't have any CMD defined in this Docker file. But how come? Let's say, maybe let's take this image also, that is fine. So in this image Docker file, I don't have any CMD defined, but how come this command is executed while starting the container where that has been defined? If you see, if I inspect the image also, any image, let me inspect this image or this image, Docker inspect tag 2. There is no image with tag 1, tag 2. Now if you see, if I inspect that image, I can see something like this command catalina.sh run. But where this instruction has been defined? This is the command which is getting executed while starting the container. While starting the container, that is the command which got executed. So where it has been defined? In our Docker file, it is not there. That is there in the base image. Do you see? There is a command, there is a CMD like this. Now, suppose if I have my own CMD here, let's say in this Docker file, let's say I have another CMD. Let's say I have another CMD. I have one more CMD like this. Now, if I create a container, will the Tomcat will be started? Suppose this is my Docker file. Out of this Docker file, I created an image, right? And if I create a container, does Tomcat process will be started? Does Tomcat process will be started? No. So we already have one CMD here. This is the recent CMD. So what command will be executed while starting the container if I have something like this? What command will be executed? Date command, right? So even though if I have more than one CMD, does all the commands will be executed while starting the container? No, only the latest, I mean to say recent CMD will be executed. Right? Now, we will use the CMD instructions to set what command has to be executed. I mean to say what process has to be started while starting the container. If you observe, how come Tomcat is automatically started inside the container? Are we executed this command manually? Did we executed this command manually inside the container? No. So how Docker knows what process has to be started inside the container? That can we define that using CMD instruction in a Docker file? Can we define that using CMD instruction in a Docker file? What command, what process has to be started? We can define that. But without having this software, without having that software, even though I define CMD, will that command works? If I don't have a Tomcat software in that machine, in that container, I cannot execute this one, right? So that is how it works. Now, again, run versus CMD. Interview, definitely all these questions will come. You no need to give a full path. If you already set the working directory as bin directory, if you already set the working directory as bin directory, or if you created a soft links in the image, you no need to do that. That remains same. You no need to give a full path. If you are already in the bin directory, working directory, or if you have created a soft links, you no need to give the full path. Now, this is one more important concept, run versus CMD. What is difference between run and what is difference between run and CMD? We already discussed. What is difference between run and CMD? Docker is very, very important. In the interview, there are a lot of questions which comes in the Docker. Lot of questions comes in the Docker, right? In the Docker file itself, you will see lot of questions. In the interview, sometimes they will ask you to write a sample Docker files also. Create a Docker file for this use case. So Docker file is very, very important. That's why we are spending a lot of time. How to, like what each instruction does. So without knowing these instructions, once you get into a project, right? If they ask you to write a Docker file for that one application, let's say there is one Java based application, they wanted to build and deploy that application as a container. So they ask you to write a Docker file. Without knowing all these instructions, how it works, Will you able to create a Docker file for that project, that requirement? No. So that's why Docker is very, very important in the interview perspective also, in the working perspective also. Now, what is difference between these two, which we already discussed, run versus CMD? In simple words, run instruction will be executed when? Run instructions will be executed when? Run instructions will be executed while creating a image. While creating a image. Can I have more than one run instruction in a Docker file? Yes. So the use case of run. Can I use run instruction to install some softwares, to do some configurations on top of the previous layers, previous image, on top of the base image? Can I use run instructions to do installation of some softwares, some configurations on top of the previous layers? Yes. So CMD. What is the use case of CMD? When the CMD will be executed? CMD will be executed while starting the container. So can I use CMD to start the application, to start the process, whatever process I want to start inside the container? Can I mention that as a CMD in my Docker file? We can use CMD. CMD will be executed while starting the container. Can I have more than one CMD in a Docker file? Technically, yes, you can have more than one CMD, but will all the CMDs will be executed? No, only the recent one, right? Let me show you with very simple Docker files. I am not Dockerizing any application. I am not Dockerizing any application. Let me show with simple Docker file concept. Let me connect to some Docker server. Let me connect to some Docker server. Very simple Docker file I'm trying to write to show you how these instructions works. Now I have a Docker software in this machine. So let me show you. I'm creating one folder. Let me go inside that folder. What is the default name of Docker file, guys? What is the default name of Docker file? Docker file dcaps f small. This is the default name. Dcaps f small. Do we have any extension? Do we have any extension? No. So I am not Dockerizing any project, just demonstrating. I am taking something like this from CentOS as a base image. I am just demonstrating instructions. So since I have not mentioned the tag, what version of the CentOS base image will be used? :latest. On top of this CentOS, using run instruction, if required, can I create some folders like this? Whatever folder I want to create, and will I able to install, or will I able to do some, will I able to install some softwares on top of this CentOS library? We can do that, right? So just to demonstrate, I'm using echo. I'm using echo statements so that you can understand when these instructions will be processed. Let's say I can create some directory, or I can install some software, something like this. Something like this. I can install some software, something like this. I'm using echo so that you can understand when this will be processed. So something like this I have given. So when this run instruction will be processed, when this will be processed, when this will be processed. Now, will these instructions will be processed while creating an image? Let me show that. Let me show that. Sorry. So this is the Docker file. I am not Dockerizing any application. I don't want to push this image to any registry also. So I'm just building like this. I'm just giving name as this. I'm not tagging with any registry. I'm not tagging with any registry. I'm building like this. What this dot indicates again? The build context. So if I want to copy some files to this image, can I use copy instruction? Let's say I want to copy some file. That can be application code, that can be XML, that can be shell script. Can I use copy instruction in a Docker file if I want to copy some code, some file to the image? I can use that based on the requirement. Now I am not copying anything. So let me execute, let me create an image. So why? What name it is expecting? Why we are getting this error? Tell me. What name it is expecting? What is the default name of Docker file? What is the default name of Docker file? There is no Docker file. If you see, do you see there is a typo here? R is missing. R is missing. It is expecting some Docker file with this name. Do I have a file with that name? It is saying it is not able to find a Docker file. Now, it is not with the default name. If it is not with a default name, can I use -f? If it is not with the default name, can I use -f? Something like this. Something like this. Can I use -f? We can use. Or let me rename if you don't want to use -f. So Docker file. I have renamed now. I have a file with this name. In that case, even though I don't use -f, will it work? Will it work? Even though I don't use -f, because I have this name. Now, if you see, it is pulling the base image. It is pulling the base image. On top of that base image, as are these run instructions is getting processed. Now, if you see, do you see? I used echo so that you can understand when it is processed. I used echo to make you understand when that is processed, right? So if you see, let's get finished. If you see, image is successfully built, successfully tagged. If you see, in my Docker file, these are the instructions. Do you see this instruction is already processed since I used echo, so that you can see, do you see, is this run instruction is already processed? When this run instruction is executed, is it executed while creating an image? So if you see, what is this running in this one, removing that intermediate container? What does it mean? So is it creating some intermediate container to process that layer, to process that command? Is it creating some intermediate container to process that layer, to create that layer. If you see, it has created one intermediate container, temporary container, process this command and remove that intermediate container, and this is the layer. This is the layer got created for that. Now, this command got executed while creating a container. And if you see this run instruction, do you see again this run instruction, is it processed while creating an image itself? It has created one more layer. It has created this layer. So this layer, in this layer, do we have a Git software? Do we have a Vim software in this layer? This layer. It has created one more layer and one more layer. This is another layer. If you see, we created this image. Now, does this image will have a CentOS libraries plus Git and Vim software? Does this image will have a CentOS libraries first plus Git and Vim software? Now, it has created the layers, that image. I can see that image. Now, how to see the layers of this image? How to see the layers of this image? What command I can use? How many layers are there for this image? Can I use this command? Docker history. Now, if you observe, all these layers are from where? All these layers, whatever I have selected, these layers are from which image? From where these layers came? The base image. And what about this layer? What about this layer? What about this layer? Is our run instructions created the layer on top of the base? If you see, what is this size? 166 MB. We have this layer size is 166 MB. What is there in this layer? This 166 MB size? The Git and Vim software. Now, this image, does this image contains CentOS libraries plus Git and Vim software? This image. If I create a container out of that image, does that container will have a Git software and Vim software? Yes. So run instruction, can I use run instructions to install some softwares, to create some directories, to do some configurations on top of the image, on top of the previous layers? Yes. Now, CMD. So CMD, what that CMD contains, I have not given any CMD. I have not given any CMD. Now, if I create a container out of this one, I am creating a container out of this one. If I create a container out of this one, container is created, but why it is in exited state? Why it is in exited state? Why the container is in exited state? What command got executed by default? What command got executed by default? If you see, what command got executed? bin/bash. But where I have defined? Did I define in our Docker file? Did I define that in our Docker file? No. But how come that is defined? Where that is defined? If you see, do you see that is there in the base image? So container is created, but why it is not starting? Because do we have any application, any process which makes that container up and running? No. It has successfully executed. What this 0 indicates, guys? Exited, showing code as 0. This command is executed. It's done the job. It's done with its job. There is no process which keeps that container alive. Now, if you see, it is creating a layers. All those layers makes the image. Now, if you see, is it creating some intermediate container to process each layer? It is creating one intermediate container to process that instruction, to create that layer. Then it is removing that intermediate container. This is the layer of that instruction. You can see that layer, this one. This is the layer of this instruction, previous instruction, right? Now, Docker is going to use concept of build cache. Docker is going to use a concept of build cache. So these layers has been processed for the first time. It has took some time. Now, if I try to create a image one more time, do you see this time it is very fast? When I'm trying to create image one more time, do you see this time it is very fast? What is the meaning of this? Using cache, using cache. Sometimes in the interview, they are going to ask this, what is Docker build cache? Since this layer is already available, this layer is already processed, and there is no change in that layer, there is no change in that instruction. So is Docker is going to create that layer again if there is no change in the instruction, if that layer is already available in this machine? Is it going to create that layer again from scratch? No. It is already there, it is using the cache concept. So does it improve the build time? If it is using a cache concept, does it improve the Docker build time, the image creation time? Since there is no change in that instruction, it is not processed that layer. Suppose if there is a change in this instruction, is it going to process this layer and subsequent layers again? Suppose I am changing something in this instruction in Docker file. I am changing that instruction. Let's say Vim, I want to have, let's say, curl also. Now I am changing. This layer will not be processed again, but these two layers, will it be processed again? These two layers will be processed again? Yes, let me show that. Let me build. Now the previous layer, there is no change, but the subsequent layers, is it processing again since there is a change in the instruction? So it is using a concept of cache. It is using a concept of cache. So Docker build cache to improve the build time. But if I don't want to use the cache concept, even though there is no change, I want to process those layers again. I don't want to use the concept, that cache concept. I don't want to use cache. Is there any option? I can inform Docker, I don't want to use cache, again create that layers. There is an option. We can say -, no cache. I can use this option, -, no cache. Even though that layer is there, there is no change in the cache also. If I use this option, is it going to process that layer again? If you see, is that layer is again getting processed? So we can use this option if you don't want to use the cache, the build cache of Docker. I'll continue tomorrow, guys. It's already 9:25. I'll continue tomorrow. So I will explain CMD, and later I will explain entry point. All these instructions will continue tomorrow. Even though it's a very small concept, but it is very, very important concept. That's why we are spending a lot of time, right? So what is from, what is CMD, what is copy? We are trying to understand. Tomorrow I'll continue with the rest of the topics. Thank you, guys. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll continue on Docker file instructions again tomorrow. Unless until you practice, you cannot remember all these things. My request for each one of you, whoever is attending, try to practice. If you just attend the class, you cannot remember this one for a long time. Maybe you can remember for 10 days, 15 days after that you will forget. But the more practice you do, the more assignments you do, you can remember this one. That is what we are going to do in the real time also, guys. Once you get into a project, you are responsible for creating a Docker files, creating images, deploying those images in your actual project, right? The more hands-on you do, you will be able to crack the interview. You will be able to manage your work. Okay. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, guys.